Online courtship. Online courtship. Almost on cue. Just got a Tinder message. Been in the last couple of videos. It's so dark. Hold up a sec. Let me see if I can lighten it up. Maybe this helps the focus sometimes. Lighten it up. It kind of helps. But then it just goes back to being dark. It is what it is. So there we go. That's good. That's not so bad. Maybe if I lean in closer a little bit. Online courtship. So we're going to talk about, let's see, 2008. This is cool because I put all the emails from my first initial encounter with this girl who ended up being my first actual relationship where 2008, so 10 years ago, so I was 26. And had tried dating, starting to realize that there was a type of girl I could get out there. And then I think that's how you get better at dating, same sex, opposite sex, whatever it is. You have to figure out. I think it's a little bit easier. Well, no. I talk to gay friends in New York, and I say it's easier for you guys to meet people because it seems like it's more of a culture of approaching people. But then they say, well, it's harder to date someone seriously. So there's always positive and negatives. So I'll only speak about what I know. The online courtship. Anyways, so I think that's how you, in my experience, get better at this type of thing. Oh, that's really unfocused. Focus. Is you, first of all, realize you're not absolutely unattractive. It hurts if you're really like I was. I was really caught up on a girl who had her issues with drugs and other stuff that she's still working out. She's a good person in my life. Back then, I wasn't the best in her life. She wasn't the best in my life. So that type of person doesn't give you an objective picture of your attractiveness because we still don't really talk about the early days of our friendship, whatever it was. A lot of the favors I did for her because we're good to each other now and we're like family. And so you appreciate family. You appreciate, after like 10 years or so, someone who you've known that long. They carry a part of your story. And that's why we keep linking back together. I call her Addie the addict. But she's more than that now. She's a human being who's creating a beautiful life for herself. And got a nice little boyfriend and a nice little life in New York. But and we play music, and she lived with me for a while earlier this year. Actually got along well with this girl that I was dating. We were all like a happy little family. We had a good little thing going before I gave up that apartment. But back when I first knew her and I was trying to get with her, I don't think she was objective or honest about us, and so it lowers your self-esteem for someone to be messing with you a little bit like that. Because if someone doesn't want to be with you, or if someone just is using you for things, or she had her addiction and everything, when you're an addict, everything is feeding into the addiction. Then she's not going to admit if like I'm attractive or if I have good qualities going for me. She's just trying to manipulate the situation. Even now, when I feel like she has some of those old manipulative ways, I try to, like friends do, try to call her out on that. Like, yo, that's not cool. Let's try to love each other and be good friends to each other. It's hard to break those patterns of survival, of using interactions just to try. I don't think that just goes away right away. You have to work on yourself. Just like myself too. I didn't get better. My lack of ability with women was pretty much due to my lack of ability to be good to them. If you so that's where it comes into taking responsibility. Like the last couple videos ago, I said the DUI. I could say it was Kobe and the Lakers. I could say it's this culture of driving and drinking in Southern California. You go to the bar, of course you're going to be driving home shit-faced. But you got to take responsibility for your actions. You control what you can control. And I can say that like growing up conservative Christian and having sex be a shame thing, and then also having these stack of playboys throughout high school, that I would masturbate and turn my energy inwards as opposed to looking around me. That there's actually, if I look back on it, decent girls I could have dated who were into me. Didn't really take up those opportunities. But but that's also because I had to figure out a philosophy of life and love. All of these are separate but interrelated. A philosophy of sales, how to make money in an ethical way where you're not ripping people off, how to treat a woman right. If you work on that philosophy as a dude, a heterosexual dude, and you treat women better, regardless of if you want to have sex with them or not, that will increase the opportunities of women to be in your vicinity and friends. And like this girl, the recovering girl who I was really into in my 20s. If I looked at things at a purely conquest basis, I would just be either trying to fuck her or still resenting her for not fucking me. But since I've grown my heart through other relationships, that's a lot of it isn't stuff you can learn from the outside. That's why I tried to tell other guys. This guy in Santa Cruz who didn't want to date this girl, I was like, if it's not like you're gonna marry her, but practice love. Just practice kissing, practice having sex, practice submitting yourself humbly to another person in a physical union. That's one of the, I guess, biggest fallacies about Christianity and that whole saving yourself, which I didn't really believe, but I believed enough to put it off, which is cool. Being a late bloomer is cool. This girl I met, the online courtship, she was a bit of a late bloomer, so we attracted our own. Usually people with a lot of experience track that. People with less experience attract that. When I mess with girls in their 20s now, I find that they have a lot of experience, and that's why they seek out, I think, older men, because people their age can't relate to what they've been through. So I was at this rooftop pool, and there's this girl who started talking to a couple people around me. She was the one that the conversation continued. Everyone else went back to what they were doing, but there was something there, so we kept talking. I was talking about the Zen Buddhism I was reading at the time. She seemed pretty deep. But yeah, she happens to mention that her last boyfriend was in his 50s, and that's like an indicator. When you're talking to people, you're single, you live around here, these little indicators that things might progress past this conversation. So if I'm talking to a young girl and I'm thinking, the age difference, this isn't really going to end up being romantic or anything. But then if she mentions she dated someone older in the past, it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe that door's still open. So, and later on, she came over to my apartment. We hung out a little bit. We had a cute little date, if you could call it that, but that fell off. But so you learn how to qualify these things more. You learn who is your potential, who isn't, what a good lead is, a good romantic lead, what isn't. But a big basis of that is opening up your heart to just treat women in general better. And that will just give you, it's like that salesperson who hates the leads and hates his job. You can't hate your job and be good at it. You can, but you'd be a lot more effective, I think, if you learn to love it and appreciate it. So most people I speak with when I'm trying to make money, I speak with joy and just trying to inform people. I always, in sales, in real estate, I would end the conversations, even the bad ones I didn't like, or if I was trying to get someone off the phone, or if they're giving me an attitude, I was giving it back to them. They're like, I've rented in New York. I've been living here 10 years. And I'm like, so what? You've done 8 to 10. If you're moving every year, you've done 10 transactions. And I've done a couple, closing on 1,000 now. So someone on this side of the conversation has a little bit more experience than the other. So who's going to be the leader? Who's going to be the professional here? Just little stuff like that. I could be rude to people a little bit. Just try to frame the discussion and look at, there's a service professional you're talking to. Let's not. But at the same time, I end the conversation with, advice is always free. I don't think the service is going to work out because I'm looking for people who need what I do and are willing to pay for it. But I don't mind you keeping me as a second opinion. Best of luck working on your own, because it sounds like you want to act as your own broker. You don't want to pay someone a broker fee, then you want to act as your own broker. That's the best way to save the broker fee, because I can't work for free, and I don't advise you looking for other people to work for free. You're probably going to get ripped off or just frustrate people. But if you put the time in and you want to call someone or talk to someone, make sure you got the best deal, call me. And that's a good way to, like, you don't want to put negative energy out there, so you want to end things positively. So the same thing with women. A predatory, acquisitive nature of, I'm just going to do this or that, is going to put out a certain energy, which is going to push good women away from you, I think. You might not even notice you're putting that energy out if you don't have many female friends to check you. So your female friends, I've stony discussions, talk about my life, other stuff, and they say, you know what, the way you're describing that situation, you didn't really come off well. And even if I don't realize how I'm coming off a lot of times, and so that's why you have these conversations. I think a big part of men's health is men talking to other men and letting them know how they come off, and then women too. So it's hard to have those conversations when everyone's accusing each other of being a rapist. So I think the way they did Aziz Ansari, and even Louis C.K. in a way, was wrong, because that's maybe pushing people away from conversations they should be having. Because men at heart are insecure. Everyone's insecure about what we don't know. And men know that they don't know a lot of times how they come off. And if there's any sort of intelligence to them, they acknowledge they don't know the female perspective. So whenever we can help the males and females understand each other's perspectives, just like you would in race or anything else, it's going to de-escalate, and it's going to lead to probably better interactions. And I'm just using my own personal experience. This girl I met through this online courtship, I was a little silly in the way I was approaching women. I still am. You become more and more mature. But she, man, it's so dark, this thing. I'm just going to hold this thing up the whole time. But she opened up my heart a lot. And she has probably the best heart. Different women I've loved and different women I actually thought if I should marry or I should settle down with have different strengths. There we go. I'm just going to hold this thing there for a minute just to keep it light. And this girl, her strength was her heart. She's just the most loving person I've ever met. She cooks and cleans and loves me. And if I had to think, it's just that artistic side of me, why it ended, that I'd be sitting there trying to write or trying to do my political thing, because once you take the love off the table, just like when I took the money off the table, I was making close to $200,000 in real estate a year. I made $500,000 by then. I still have this initial impulse to figure out the world around me, and I know I'm being lied to and politically, and I have this backlog of emotional commitment. In life, if I have any rules, it's that you keep your word and you build your character. Honesty and sincerity corrects towards a true expression of your human potential, which I'm starting to find spiritually in like Zen Buddhism and other spirituality that is less about the name of God and the lineage and more about the true expression of human potential, and changing the worst in us into the best, changing the judgmental or the strong negative emotions into the long-lasting positive emotions or reflection or wisdom, using your emotions and filtering those into a spiritual process, so the end of it is wisdom, because otherwise life's very hard when it's irrationally pain and suffering or other things. So I went off on a long tangent on that one. Well, I haven't even started this yet. So I'm going to go through these emails and talk about this courtship. And then at the end of it, I just got some matches on Tinder. I wasn't even going to do it. And that's another thing. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Just, I don't feel like doing these videos sometimes. I don't feel like writing sometimes. But you sit down and you get out your 1,500, 2,000 words a day. I'm doing these videos a couple hours a day. So if you're lonely, you don't want to put out your best or your worst face. So I don't want to go out there and talk to people when I'm feeling like shit. And I'm not feeling like shit. Sometimes this project seems completable, and then some days you wake up and you're like, it's so big, it's fucking, it's not completable. Nah, you always have to believe it's completable. It's just some days you wake up and you're just like, it's a lot of work. But those are the days like you wake up and you're going to go to the gym and you're like, well, fuck, I don't want to go to the gym, but it's not up to you. It's not up to that part of your brain. It's up to another part of your brain and that's what I was saying about keeping your word. If keeping your word means, first of all, you have to keep it to yourself. Just like being honest means, first of all, you have to look in the mirror. Look inward. When you judge other people, you point at other people, it's usually projection. So if you're going to have a word, first of all, you have to be able to honor what you say to yourself. Sometimes, but you also have to acknowledge when you say things that aren't accomplishable. Otherwise, you're going to destroy yourself attempting the impossible. And that's ego too. I know a lot of people who are successful, but they drive themselves way too hard, I think. And so treat yourself like a child is what I always say. You want to correct the child towards good character, but you want the child to still have a happy childhood. So let yourself play in this and that. My workouts a day are a half an hour, plus stretching and driving there and back. It's an hour and a half. If I can't put an hour and a half into my own body and my own self, then I think I have the wrong perspective in life. So that's why I work out. Also, sitting here and then doing a lot of reading and writing isn't the best for your health, being so stationary. So you want to make sure you go somewhere where you can exercise this meat sack and keep it in good working condition. The gym has always been my health care. Never really had health care all my life. Saw a dentist maybe like 10 years ago, about 10, 12 years ago. So, and I got my appendix out. So that was, but other than that, stay in the gym, and so far so good. Eventually I probably should get a checkup, right? So, all of that being said, Tinder, I have a couple girls who have matched. Oh, one of them sent me a message. Let me just see. I'm pretty sure one of them's a catfish. That's how the numbers go. So let's get this catfish out of the way, and then I'm going to read the online courtship with the girl that became the relationship. And then I'm going to be in a very positive headspace, remembering the depth that I've proven I'm able to love and the good women who've loved me. And then I'm going to send this girl, who I think actually out of all the ones I've received so far has the most potential, a cool message. So. I was just going to check out the catfish. Oh, never mind. I was wrong. I thought the catfish messaged me, but she didn't. You know what? Technical difficulties. Pretty sure she messaged me. I just closed the app and opening it again. If anyone else is watching this, it might be like, but Shaz, you don't look like the type of person who would attract a match. And yeah, my look is kind of funny right now. I have a lot of different looks. But, you know, I'm not looking for the most superficial person. I could do superficial, but it's if you're going fishing, there's different types of bait. Right now I got a kind of funny bait on, but it is what it is. I don't think I'm looking for young and fun right now. I don't have the money or bandwidth for that. I think I'm looking for a little bit more closer to my age. I'm 36. This one who I think has potential, she's 36, and she's a professor. So she seems very smart. We could talk about stuff. If we're both horny, we could also scratch that itch. So it might be the casual thing I need to get back in the saddle and get my mind off this New York dancer girl. She's in LA. I'm about 60 minutes outside LA right now at my folks' place in Ontario. So it could be an excuse to go into LA maybe once a week for a dinner and some adult company. Be an adult. But that's how I've lived my life. Is I understand what I need to balance myself out. So at this time in my life, after the DUI, after the New Yorker rejected me, I'm like, well, fuck, I'm not the brilliant poet that I thought I was, at least not now, at least not according to some. Now I'm starting to be more curious about the narratives we have in our society and which ones are astroturfed, which ones are promoted through corporate or power systems. So I'm not too worried about my work not being accepted because I don't think it's a fair playing field right now. I think that a lot of these pop stars and a lot of these artists are, I had some leftovers, a whole bunch of, it's my parents' anniversary today, and they went on anniversary dinner and brought me back so many leftovers. That's why you live at home, because your parents, if I eat all the food in their fridge, they're happy. So I'm eating as much as I want, which is what homeless Shaz needed. He needed the love of my girlfriend, the dancer girl in New York, the most recent one. She was, she called me desmadre. Desmadre in Spanish means without a mother. So when I got evicted and I was walking on the street, and I even asked her if I could crash at her place, and she doesn't deal with the poverty. She's like, we had a good thing when I had some money and we were equals, but she's only known me for about a year. Met her a year ago on 4th of July, so not this 4th of July, but a year before then. And she works 4 or 5 jobs when she has to, and she busts her ass. So she doesn't know me enough to not think that I'm a little bit insane right now for She even asked me, "When are you going back to real estate? You had such a good life. You had such a good job." She's just a little confused, and I'm like, "Oh, can I crash at your place?" She's like, "Nah, that's not really what I'm all about." She's not gonna let my craziness into her life like that. I don't blame her for it, but my old school homies who know that I'm up and down and have seen these artistic wanderings before are the ones who've been taking me in. But anyways, we're not gonna talk about her, even though she's on my mind. We're gonna talk about the first girl that I felt like I could actually love. This girl, at one point, I was like, I should just marry you. There's something that wasn't there artistically, creatively, and that's something that if I don't get married and I don't settle down, those are I guess the things that haunt you. You don't want to regret in life, but this if you were to regret, this is where regrets would be born from. I think everything happens for a reason. If I'm going to be single the rest of my life, or not single, but just going from relationship to relationship, I know that's not a bad life. I know older dudes who do that. I think I got the style, the charisma, and the energy to keep dating young girls all my life if I wanted to. I know I have the money, the confidence, but if I don't settle down with someone, I'll know that one of these girls would have that was my options. I don't think if it doesn't happen, probably within the next little bit of time, I'm probably just gonna ride out into the sunset because I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I'm being fatalistic, but she was a good girl, and every now and then I look back like kick myself in the butt. So it says Shooter Jennings, and she's still my friend. She's this is my best friend. I mean, because we went to the depths of this romantic love. She has a really good boyfriend now. There were a couple rebound relationships after this relationship where it took us a little bit of time to figure out what our, and of course not of course, but this is just how I am. Keep trying to fuck her until she tells me no. She's like, no, we're friends now. We can't. She told me really beautifully. She said, I don't want you to blur my color. And I love that. It's because it expressed more than a literal statement. Like, there's a color to her in my life now that sexualizing it would blur that color. And that's why when I was homeless recently, she took me in because she made me sleep on the floor, but she knows me. But I accept that. I'm just always going to kind of try if I can. She's like, nah, Shaz, you can sleep here, but you sleep at the foot of the bed. So I give her shit like I'm a fucking dog, but whatever. That's who I am. So here we go. Shooter Jennings, 4th of July. Nice. The world is in short supply of good music taste. It would be in bad shape without you. Vital stats, 5'11", athletic, short dark hair, brown eyes, frequent wearer of heart on sleeves, salvation smiles, sweet disposition that masks new to the city naivety. I have Lucky Strikes, Jack Daniels, and a recipe for warm buttered rum that is heaven in a glass. If anything, you sound like you have a personality. We probably have a good combo. Hit me up if any of this intrigues you and you want to exchange pics and or tragicomic suicide notes. Why was that my opener? This is December 21st. I had moved to New York, sleeping on my brother's floor. He was living in an apartment with 4 people. So 2008, he was living in Williamsburg. This is a good like 5 or so years before that show Girls started. So Williamsburg was, my brother had a knack of living in cool areas before they were cool. If you know a scene, you're usually able to spot it. I lived in Bed-Stuy back then too, and now Bed-Stuy's blowing up, and then Crown Heights is blowing up. So these areas of Brooklyn that just the wave of gentrification goes into a poor neighborhood, a bunch of hipster kids moves in. It happens everywhere, but like in LA, Silver Lake, or downtown near Staples Center, these neighborhoods that start filling out. Venice Beach is crazy now. Venice Beach is like the West Village. But I just went down there. I took my folks down there and, a little bit ago, and I walked them around in some areas that when I come out to the city, when I had money, I would like to stay out there. So I'm in Williamsburg about, I say before Girls because after Girls it just got stupid. Williamsburg got more expensive than the East Village, which just from a real estate perspective, you're paying more money to live in Brooklyn than Manhattan. I understand there's benefits to Brooklyn, but Manhattan is one of the densest places in the world. You have everything in Manhattan. Even if it's the East Village, you're 5-10 minutes north of Soho, Little Italy, the Lower East Side, 15 minutes west of or east of the West Village, Broadway. So anyways, I think it's a little silly. So my brother, he was paying 2,800, 2,200 maybe for that apartment between four people. So they're only paying about $500 to $600 a piece. So back then, he had a pretty good deal. He helped get it rent control because they qualified, and then the landlord started. That was before I got into real estate. That was my first little insight into the trench warfare that is New York real estate between tenants and landlords. The landlord turned off his heat, was threatening him, being a dick. But my brother got it rent stabilized, so the landlord couldn't do crazy stuff, which everyone else was doing. Those apartments would, when they turn over, now they're charging from 2,200 to 3,000, 3,500. They'll go up 50% if the landlords can. My landlord did that to me, even though that was illegal. That's a whole nother issue. And when she evicted me, I documented some stuff. And when I'm back up with a little bit of money and stability, I'll go and have my piece about that. But this video is going to get too long if I don't get to it. Setting the scene. I'm feeling like I've read all the political stuff. I was working with my folks. You can only do that for so long before you start irritating each other again. And Dad's a strong Irishman. We all got tempers. So having two males in the house, especially I think in your 20s, I'm more mellow now. Right now it's a lot of love since I've been here. We've all suffered more. A little bit more perspective. Making the money helps. When my parents get on me on money, I'm like, you know what, I've done it before. You know I can do it. I'm chasing something here. Give me a break. And they're a little more understanding. They're not as worried seeing that I've been able to build a corporation and a business. And I put my head down and work for 5-6 years. It's okay for me to take a break. But back then, bunking head, so I decided to skip out on their agency. Got the DUI. California's not really treating me right. I think I was under suspension from that license for like at least 6 months. So if you can't drive, when you're driving dirty in California, it's pretty bad. That's one of the reasons why being undocumented sucks so bad. It's a big stress. If you're pulled over and you're undocumented, they're towing your car right away. So that's $1,000 right there. So anytime you're driving and you have a cop or any little infraction, or if they just want to pull you over and you don't have a license, they're towing your car, and there's a minimum impound. So it's going to be like a ticket plus the impound is usually up to like, I think $700 to $1,000. Happened to some of my cousins. So I was like, I should probably get out of California, at least for a little bit. Wait for that suspension to get off. I had that girl, Rachel, who drew that picture of me, but I didn't cultivate that relationship. Still learning how to treat women right. I tried some online dating stuff, and actually right before her, so a couple things happened to make this relationship work. One of the roommates in my brother's place was leaving for the holidays, and he said I can crash in his room if I wanted to. So now I had a room. And I'm like, well, fuck, I'm going to get laid in this room. I need to have more sexual experience. I'd had a couple girls I hooked up with since losing my virginity at 19, but not nearly enough. Like maybe like 2 or 3. So when I got that DUI, I was at that bar trying to meet more people. Like what? That's the thing. I don't buy into the normal social. This is where politics and all these false narratives affect your development. Like when I meet people, I'm not going to college. I'm not even really working, just making enough to survive. Trying to figure out when I meet people, what do you do? What do you care about? Well, what I do is try to deconstruct the false narratives of our world because I care about trying to live an honest, sincere life. What do you mean? Well, right now I'm reading a book about the economic history of World War II to find out if the Allies helped finance Hitler's rise to power, because we did hire out the Nazi intelligence afterwards. So this all might tie together. It's hard to go from there to like, can I have your number? Not many people I could relate to. The artist girl who drew me, I was relating to her because I was starting to transition into writing. So it's like, all right, this is too political. I'm becoming that guy who, like, when you talk to them, they just shift the discussion to their favorite topic. I still kind of am that guy. Just try to have more self-awareness when I'm doing it. So then I was shifting to the poetry, and that's where I read all that poetry I had and those notes on that story, trying to turn this into art. And then I was starting to realize my type of person was an artist. So when I met that girl who likes to sketch, it's like I'm not at this coffee shop just reading these political books, these thick tomes that some of them, it's like if you're reading, I think Edward Said, Culture and Imperialism or something like that. Is that the book? Some of this stuff is like you gotta like, it's like 5 pages an hour. You're just really slowly slogging through it. So Chomsky could get like that a little bit. You have to slow down and make sure you're processing what's happening because there's a lot of cognitive dissonance if for the first time you're hearing about civil war being instigated in Latin America only 20 years ago. You're like, we don't talk about this. This is insane. These and these guys are still in power, and these guys are. So when you realize the disconnect between actual verified reality and political narratives, it could be very disorienting. And I relate it to drug trips because it's a lot like that. I have that very same feeling like, what's going on? Who am I? Where am I? How I orient myself in a heavy psychedelic trip in order to function in social settings. Maybe that's why I do it. Take a lot of psychedelics and then wander around in social settings and function because at your core, if you have the best framework of accepting reality, then less things shake you. You're more stable, I feel. Way off topic. So I'm feeling like I need a good love in my life. Oh yeah, so I was at that bar and I got that DUI. And so I picked up a girl at that bar. She came over to my table, and I have a pretty big personality, especially if I'm drinking. I get a little bubbly. Um, Guys and girls, usually I'm talkative and we make friends. So I think I'm playing pool. I'm going around, meet people at the bar, talking to people. That's why I first heard the song Fairy Tale in New York, but Christy Moore's version, not the Pogues version. Just little memories I really remember in that bar. It's this Irish bar in the Inland Empire. That was in Colton, I think. This girl comes over and I'm drinking Guinness. Irish bar, you got to drink Guinness. They're just like I'm smoking Lucky Strikes in here, just trying to be a tough little jackass. Drink the tough beer, thick beer, smoke unfiltered cigarettes, tough cigarettes. When I was in the army, people who smoked Camels unfiltered and stuff, I respected those dudes. Tough guys. When I drink my whiskey, drink it neat. Don't cut it with anything, just a big glass of whiskey. Ask them to fill it up, pay them whatever they want, and just go around sipping a big glass of whiskey all night. I don't want to go back to the bar twice. I determine how much I'm going to drink that one time I went to the bar, and usually that's what I like to do, and then I milk it. Just you start to learn. That's in the Shaz art of manliness. You learn how to sip your liquor. It's not like beer. When I was younger, I would pound beer, and then I learned as I got older to sip better liquor than pounding cheap beer, and figure out how to only go to the bar once in the night. But so that girl, she came up to my table and she drank my Guinness. She just walked up and she grabbed it and she just drank it. And then she smiled at me, and I was like, well, this is my type of person. And so we had a little bit of a funny thing. We went back to my place that night, and then she had a kid. She had a tragic story. She was the high school princess, pretty girl, and she was still pretty, but in high school she was the gorgeous girl in high school. And then a local kid, an Arabic kid whose family owned gas stations, so he had a lot of money, knocked her up, but his family wouldn't allow him to marry her because she wasn't Arabic or whatever they were, whatever religion. And in Southern California, Inland Empire, we have a lot of doctors, medical professionals, at Loma Linda University, and a lot of those are immigrant families who come over, professionals with those types of trades, and expect a lot out of their children. So some of the children, when they don't follow that path, are still correcting towards that path. So they don't go to the nice college, but they're going to community college in order to go back to that. And I know a lot of these kids, disaffected kids, who were still trying to live up to their parents' ambitions, but doing it in their own way, still driving the nice car their parents bought them and stuff. So this girl got knocked up by one of those guys who didn't sound like he really loved her, but he was giving her money, gave her an apartment, and took care of the kid. But and so you could tell she was still into him. So that was tragic all the way around. Oh, that opened up my heart a little bit. Just suffering, just meeting people and being like, man, what can you do? I came over once with El Pollo Loco, and she was like, oh, you're trying to be a good dad. And I just thought, no, I'm just trying to be normal. Like, I'm going to come over. I'm not just going to hook up with you. I'm like, your kid's right there. We're going to like have a little bit of like, let's feed the kid. Let's have like normal time. And then we'll go in the back room and we'll mess around. But her expectations were really low. A little bit of kindness to her seemed like I was just trying to impress her. And I was just trying to be a good dude. And so she broke my heart. And I mean, just because of her lifestyle. So that when I went to New York, I didn't even really look back at that. That was just something that was on again, off again. But I had a little bit more experience with girls, um, and with like the world and seeing these patterns of how they play out. And well, I don't want to be that dude. And you you don't want to be too judgmental about other dudes because everyone's living their own life. Like that, I think I said in an earlier video, you're not the bed that they sleep on. When you look at a relationship from the outside, it's easy to judge. But you do start to develop what type of man you want to be, and you start to develop your own morality on how to treat women. So yeah, you know, there's all these little pitfalls you can fall in. If you're too chivalrous and romantic, you're like, I'm enabling this drug addict who was every moment she could lowering my self-esteem in order to keep getting things from me and keep manipulating me emotionally. And I wasn't thinking about her health or her safety. I was just thinking really about what I wanted from her. I was lonely, and also I didn't have sexual experience, and I was really attracted to her. To like a pheromone, when I would get close to her, I would smell her, and I would like if I borrowed her car, it would it would be overwhelming, just her smell of her in the car. I would be thinking about her, and I could just cry thinking about what she's going through or her life. Like I would just be driving down the highway, and I would just, one of the issues in life I think is to retain your sensitivity without becoming weak, and learn how to be effective without becoming cold. So, and art I think helps you do that. So, but I was very sensitive back then, and hopefully I still am. So when I would try to get more experience, I'd go online. I was staying with my brother. I went to New York, completely fresh slate, working for Greenpeace right down the street. There's this girl in Greenpeace I actually kind of liked, but this happened so that I didn't follow that route. But I was starting to recognize when I liked someone and when there was mutual interest a little bit. Um, I'm in New York. You have that energy of like new to the city, get people's numbers. I got a couple numbers, just why not? You get a vibe. You're in the coffee shop. You talk to someone. What are you reading? That's cool. It's poetry. Oh yeah, I'm here to try to sell the book. Just the artist. I have an idea about a book, but all of a sudden talking to someone else, I'm here to meet someone to sell the book. I have projects already finished. Oh yeah, I'm a poet. Blah blah blah. So who knows how many lies slip through the lips of horny men, right, when they're trying to get laid. So this girl, she said that it was close to Christmas, and she said that someone please message me before I kill myself. This is such a depressing fucking city, blah, blah, blah. All her friends were gone, and she was living at home, but she had never moved out of home. So I'm 26, so she is 21, turning 22. No, she's 22, because she would say, I'm 22, I can't. She says, I don't want to turn 23 because I won't be able to be 22, and she would do that at 22. Really cute. So, and I'm 26. And so yeah, and I've known her for fucking 10 years now. But we've been through a lot. She went with me to Puerto Rico and stuff, and when I first broached the concept of breaking up with her in Puerto Rico, feeling like I had to go back to the United States and actually sell my writing and get back to my ambition, my life's goal, which isn't just to be married or isn't just to be happy, which is sad to say, but I have this beautiful woman who loves me, who keeps telling me every now and then, when we're just after sex or laying there, I'll do anything for you. I'll be with you as long as I can. And I'm just like, no, I don't think it's supposed to work out. So the first time I really actually seriously talked about it like that, I had thought about it high for like weeks. Then I finally put that out in the atmosphere, and we had a fight. And she jumped on my back and she tried to choke me. She's a Latin girl, so not all Latins are like this, but this Latina, when the emotions get very powerful and strong, they come out. She's not going to sit there and just quietly stew. She's like, you bring me down to Puerto Rico, fucking do this, and this with me, blah, 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 and then you're going to fucking act like. So she didn't grab a knife, but she tackled me, and I had to tactfully separate myself from the situation. But we're in a very good place now, and that romantic door is closed, sealed, barricaded, dynamited. I couldn't even fucking crack that shit with like there's not. She takes care of our friendship by making sure that it's very clear what terms our friendship are on. I want to be wiser later on in my life, where I can do that myself too with relationships and not sexualize them, but I still have, I guess, problem doing that. So I still, I think, would go back if I could when I'm lonely or horny. Like, why not? This people, if you've had sex with someone before, it's safe, but there's more emotions involved, and maybe more on the female side than the male side. That's proven biologically. Females release certain chemicals during sex, which might make for more pairing and bonding than the males do. So we might always just want to fuck the world, and it takes a little bit more effort for us to control it. But so she's online. She's saying that my fucking my parents suck, all the 22-year-old shit. She looks back now. I showed her these emails, and I'm like, look at how fucking you acted. And she's like, oh my gosh, I acted like such a bitch towards my parents. I'm like, yeah, that's called maturity now, being able to reflect on like how silly we were. And so, but it's good to do. So she was like, my parents suck and blah, blah, blah. Oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. Someone please talk to me. And so this is me. I'm like, well, I'm athletic and I'm cool and I smoke Lucky Strikes and blah, blah, blah. And I'm starting to learn, don't vomit too much. I still write too much in these little exchanges, but that's what eventually won her over. But I'm starting to learn less is more. So I just want to create a good moment, good exchange, and try to earn that in person. And I'm pretty sure in person that I can, if there's chemistry, we're going to go somewhere. So but that also comes from not being so insecure. At first you're like, oh my God, I have to get this girl. And it's like that Tommy Boy scene where he's like, I just have a deal and I squeeze it and I ruin it. And he squeezes the bread in his fingers. It's like, if you want anything in life, you have to learn how to chill, which just goes back to the flow state, Zen state of wisdom. This is the highest form of arts. It usually uses Zen type terminology of, it's a balance of opportunity meets preparation. So you just prepare for love by investing in yourself and investing in how to treat women well. Female psychology, not pop psychology, but look at the women in your life. Invite more women into your life. What do they care about? What do they want? Listen to them. That's the most important thing. You have women in your life so you can listen to them. So anyways, number 2 out of 16. Shit. 19 more minutes. We might do 2 videos on this because she's a very important person in my life. Oh, so why did she say, ooh, you got the reference? Because she put some fucking Shooter Jennings 4th of July. She put a quote to a song in her. This is Craigslist. So when I have the room and I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to get laid. Shaz is on his build an experience kick. I just had this girl from a tragic situation in Southern California, but I had it. I had the nice high school cheerleader girl on her way down. I was just one of the branches she was hitting. This is another thing. Was that maybe I should have stayed in contact with her and been more of a positive person in her life, but I just there was a bar hookup that I was like, oh, this is just too much for me with the kid and everything else. I'm like, I'm writing. Oh, and also the writing, the poetry and all that other stuff. I didn't sell it, but I knew it was good. Like New Yorker might tell me it's bad, but I've never cared what other people say. I'm the kid who went to school with no shoes just to see if I could do it. Ditched class to read the textbook so I could pass the AP test. In the Army, when they're telling me I'm a dumbass, I'm like, you know what? I don't really like this whole fucking institution. It's never been hard for me to form my own opinion, at least about myself. Just like from what I observed, this is my view, and I'll ride that to the grave. So like, I really liked where I got with that political stuff and how I put it into those poems, and I still do. And that's where I come back to this idea about art being healing is I know it's healed me. I know it took those strong political emotions and it allowed me to retain my sense of idealism and justice and my sense of objective history. I reclaimed my history and I started to form a narrative that I'm still building on now. That's an alternative which is more accurate representation of objective reality. And the book that I'm working on now that I hope to sell, I will sell, is that concept that we're denied objective frameworks of reality because there's so much malicious political narratives being pushed on us to push us this way or that way. And when you do that, you deny someone their identity, and there's this whole psychosis going on with it. So we're just looking at the symptoms and not the problem. And both sides are propagating the problem, Republicans and Democrats, propagating false narratives which are just politically convenient to them. There's many examples of Obama doing this during his administration. We all know Hillary's a liar. And we all know Trump is just an idiot playing the same game. But they're looking at Trump, they're not backing out to the overall picture. This is systemic, and this is how the game's been playing. The book I'm reading right now with Hunter S. Thompson, Freak Kingdom, I forgot, I guess. I knew about this stuff, but there's so much information. I'm trying to put it down in a coherent narrative so I could remember it. And that's what you do. But he helped extend the Vietnam War just to get elected as president. These guys are committing literal treason in order to. Anyways, so I knew that I was onto something, even if it was going to take me another 5, 10 years. It's been 10 years and I'm still working on it. But I needed to go back in the real world because I knew the pitfalls of being in that too much. I had that one guy, that crazy guy who committed suicide on the bridge. I knew, if not before fortune, there goes you or me. I knew I had a inkling of what a rounded out character was like. And I read Siddhartha. Siddhartha made money. He had the lover. And then eventually he ended up just being the wise old man. It's like I just did the money recently, but I needed the loved one. So I recognized in her ad on Craigslist. So I was like, I'm going to fucking get laid. Let me go on Craigslist. Oh, shit. Yeah, this is going to be another video. Because before I responded to her ad, I had this other girl. I was responding at Craigslist just like sales. I'd doing my couple hundred phone calls a day, started to really tie the wisdom of sales to the wisdom of picking up girls while still trying to retain a little bit of my idealism. There's this Jewish girl. It seems like Jewish culture is to New York what Mexican culture is to California. You don't really understand the West Coast unless you understand that it was Mexico first, and the Spanish missions all up and down California coast converted the Indians, and then only in the Mexican-American War was it turned over to America. So Jewish culture in New York after World War, or during the beginning of the 20th century when the Jews were being persecuted in Eastern Europe, they fled to New York, and those immigrants had these working class jobs and these stores, and they busted their ass in order to make sure that their children, they were like the Asian kids of today, especially on the West Coast. Those are immigrants from war-torn places, World War II, Japan, our Southeast Asia wars. So if you're a refugee or if you're leaving a place that's kind of shitty or kind of turmoil, you're going to make sure as hell your kids have better opportunities. That's all anyone wants. And people say it's genetic or this and that about Asian kids, but it seems like it's a refugee thing. So New York, very much so. It was the generation after World War II was as the Lower East Side and from the East Village, Jewish immigrants moving on up. And then so they made sure that their kids got good educations. And you see it with the Irish too. New York has these diasporas come to New York in order to create better opportunities for their family. And so a generation or two later, you have strong cultures of that second, third wave generation who are now having better opportunities than their parents. So I didn't know that. I'm still contextualizing it, having done real estate and having lived in New York permanently. The last 5 or 6 years I called it home, and I think it'll always be home. It's pretty much become home, Manhattan, just because it offers you everything about the human experience, and it's the heart of this imperial pattern we seem to be caught in. But that back then it was still the curiosity. So I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Never been with a Jewish girl. She was into me, a little bit chubby. I'm becoming less opinionated and more loving. So I'm not as judgmental. Like girls are just this one type. So this is like, oh, this is a new experience. We had a good vibe. We had good sex. She called me daddy a lot, and that kind of. Sometimes girls call you daddy during sex. Actually, no, that's never done it for me. It doesn't really. And then she still lived at home with her parents, with her father, and it seemed like she had a very strong relationship with him. So when she would say it to me, we only had sex a couple times. So we had a very strong physical thing. She came over, we watched Gremlins or Goonies or some 80s movie. I had the room, so we hooked up, me and the Jewish girl. And it was cool. It was money in the bag. But it wasn't. There were a couple things that it was interesting. Learning about female bodies, like going down on a girl and being like, oh, this is like. I remember in my mind it was like roast beef, like her vaginal lips, her pussy lips were like. I just remember thinking it was like roast beef. They were big, and any guy who's honest about female bodies, or about bodies in general, like look at me, I'm really hairy. Like the body's not weird. It's beautiful in all its forms. Some girls have big lips. Some girls have smaller lips. It'll take you some honest exploration to figure out where the clitoris is and what that whole anatomy down there is. My first couple times having sex, until this time, until I was 26 or so, I hadn't really explored anatomically and physically how these bodies function. So I'd get on the girl and she'd have to kind of guide me in. I wouldn't even really know how to, like, you instinctually do these. It's really interesting. You're not really taught. And my family didn't really teach me, and I didn't really have that. Our friend group, we didn't talk about sex as much. We weren't, that's what happens, I guess, if you're really religious. It's just you're not, it gets out of your head. So when you're doing these things, it's instinctual. You get on and your body kind of knows what to do, but in order to start, you're like, usually the girl would like, sometimes I would get it in, but the girl would have to get down and get it in there for me. And then talk about like foreplay and getting her wet and stuff. I wasn't, until this girl, we started having sex for a year. I was like, oh yeah, I can't just shove it in there. It's not, I noticed it was a little bit hard at first, but I just keep shoving until it got in. I didn't realize that that might actually be painful for the recipient until you realize, okay, there's an easier way to do this. You can, a little bit of preparation goes a long way. So with that Jewish girl, meet her online. This is before this one, so that's why this is going to have to be 2 videos. Yeah, because this type of, we're talking out the ideas and memories, and they don't come linearly. It's just memory connected to memory. So with the Jewish girl, I'm going down on her and I'm being like, ah, this is interesting. This is what a pussy looks like. Having sex so long, but not really inspecting the vagina. So I'm in there, I'm doing my thing. The sex talk is a little weird, but I'm like, all right, whatever. Maybe this is how people talk when they have sex. We're having a good rapport. She's liking what's going on too. We have a good connection. But I'm still looking. I'm like, I want my experience. I want my numbers up. There's not like, I'm not feeling like this is the one. And that's what you need too sometimes when you're searching. It's not like we had committed to dating each other. She's probably doing the same things, especially in a city like New York. You have a roster. You're like, all right, these are my opportunities. But you wait before you settle down, and then you have that status of the relationship discussion or whatever. And so this girl is a Latina, and she's gorgeous. You'll see on slide 2 of 16. That's one of the things I told her. You're too pretty to be online. What the fuck are you doing? But she put some country music lyric in. She claims she didn't listen to country music. Or no, she admits she did that. She claims she didn't watch Drudge Report back then. But she was a country music listening to, Drudge Report reading, because I pay attention to these political things, because these are all like deal breakers, like, oh, this girl's all fucking confused. But she had, her first boyfriend was this very conservative Italian from a conservative Italian family. Pretty sure his dad was a hitman for the mob. He was her high school boyfriend, 5 years, so 17 to 22. She had just broken up with him. He once beat her in the ear and broke her eardrum. So this dude was just like a roughneck conservative Italian dude, and his dad was like a lifelong junkie who every now and then would come back. I don't know, I shouldn't speak too much about their family. I don't know them. Stories that you hear. Sometimes you hear stories, but they come from people, and why do you want to speak about stuff you don't know about? Especially stuff that doesn't, don't put energy like that out in the universe. But she, how it relates to her and how it relates to me is she was coming from an interesting past. And then you have this young idealistic kid, and then this girl who's a Latina who is filling her head every day with conservative shit and is used to a little bit rougher dudes. She told me once that she was having sex, so before me she was on a tear. After that dude, they broke up, and she had gone to a Catholic school. So my dad went to Catholic school, and I see, the more and more I talk to him about his life and see his behavior patterns, how it maybe molded him or affected him. And this is why people should review their life at least once or think about it. I used to think that no one should do therapy because it's stupid, and now I think everyone should do therapy, if not with someone else. Have times in your life where you try to collect your narrative, put it down, and see if there's gaps that you've hidden for a reason, to hide maybe trauma or to hide inconvenient facts, because the narrative you're living now maybe is one of convenience, and that might be blind spots. So no one wants blind spots. Honesty and self-exploration will lead to greater success and happiness in your life, I think. So before me, she was on a tear after this Catholic school thing and this guy. So she was just hooking up with people. She was, I don't say that in a derogatory way or like, free sex is free sex, but she eventually became a dominatrix. So when we started dating, she was working in a dungeon in Midtown, and they had cameras looking up and down the street. So when the cops came to raid, they knew they were coming, and they would hide all the instruments of penetration, and they would only have like those would be the days they only had vegetables on hand. But other than that, because then you're not in trouble if you don't have instruments of penetration. Apparently, is how the law goes. But then you're just like whipping and pissing on people and stuff. And I was like, pissing on people, and she was like, oh yeah, everyone wants to be pissed on. That's a given. It's like after I throw some of my piss on you, what are we gonna do? Ball torture, tie your balls up. She tried it on me once. I was like, that's not. I could see why someone would like to do that, just like someone might like asphyxiation, but that's not my kink, which is okay. Without judging people, that's not my kink. Um, we're gonna get into that later on, though. We are talking about she was on a tear, so I'm coming from my really idealistic, just trying to tone down my romance a little bit. All right, every single girl isn't my one true love, and let's try not to get into these patterns where I enable people's worst vices, and then they just use me just as a nice guy. And also that nice guy thing is real because that breeds contempt in you for women in general or that woman in specific, and you don't want to do that too. And that's why how I treat this girl. I put her in a box and I say, anything I give you, I've already decided to give you from the goodness of my heart when I'm interacting with you. But if this is worst case scenario and you're still addicted or things are still going on, I've already decided how much I'm willing to put into this arcade game. And it's not transactional. When you give things, you don't want to expect things in return. But you can't walk away from deals unless you have money in your pocket. A hungry salesman, it's really hard for them to act in the client's best interest, which is why you don't really flash with a nice watch. And I would pay $100 for maybe a nice lunch with a client while we're trying to close out a deal. Not really trying to buy the business, but I'm letting them know that I have money and I don't need their money. I'm paying for the cabs just to let them know I'm good. Like when I give you my opinion, I'm just good at what I do. I live a nice life. If you want my service, I am who I say I am. I'm a guy who's very good at what he does and he lives a nice life. So if I'm making a couple 100,000 a year, I can afford these cabs. I can afford to drop 100, 200 on every client I'm trying to close because I close 1 out of 2, 1 out of 3. So it's budgeted in. I know I'm going to spend 500 or $1,000 to get that next deal, but I know I'm going to make a couple. Not that's way too much. Sometimes my numbers are funny, but I could spend a couple $100 to make that next deal. Then next deal is a couple thousand. 10% is going into trying to close these things, but I'm eating the meal as well as you, and I'm living a decent life. So while I'm doing business, I'm also taking cabs around the city, and I'm eating at nice places I like to eat at. And so it becomes a lifestyle. I'm not just selling them apartments, I'm selling them a lifestyle. I live in the village, you want to live in the village? Look, let me take you to a favorite spot. We're going to sit down, and you learn a little bit of that from other people too. You see the people who are making money and the best way they make money. It's a little bit schmoozing. So back to sex the same way. You start to build a little bit of success, and now it's like when you talk to people, you have X stories, or I have, all right, like when I started talking to this girl in person, I talked to her about the Jewish girl I hooked up with. Like, yeah, I'm in New York. I'm trying to figure it out. People are funny here, man. And then that's a little bit, you don't want to just make your interactions about throwing other people under the bus or teasing. That's more immature way. But that's, I guess, younger people. If you think about how younger people first talking about sex to each other, I overhear them all the time. And I know when I was young, they say small men talk about people, medium-sized men talk about events, and large men talk about ideas. I think that's what Eleanor Roosevelt said. So when you're younger and you don't have as much experience, you're a little bit more immature. You're just gossiping about people. Oh yeah, I hooked up with this girl. She was so silly in bed, and she would always say, Daddy, oh, it's weird. And you'll see in these emails, I gossip about her a little bit. But as you grow bigger and bigger, you can talk about the concepts that don't necessarily have to use subject matters like people. Like you get more, the wiser, more compassionate people with larger hearts don't have to make fun of others, I think. So we're going to stop this and then restart it. I'm going to start part 2 of me and the first actual romantic experience in my life, which I thought was a mature one.